The night my husband suggested sleeping with another woman, I was rinsing blood out of my scrubs in the kitchen sink. It wasn't even my blood. Just another ER shift that went sideways, ruptured appendix, combative drunk, a kid with a concussion whose mother screamed at me like I personally invented gravity. My back ached, my hair smelled like antiseptic and stale coffee, and all I wanted was a shower and silence. Instead, I heard his voice behind me. "Hey, can we talk?" There was something careful about the way he said it. Too soft. Like he was approaching a stray animal that might bolt. I shut off the faucet but didn't turn around yet. "About what?" He hesitated. I could feel it, the air shifting, his weight moving from one foot to the other. That tiny pause was enough to make dread slide cold down my spine. "About us. Our future." My stomach clenched. That word again. Future. Lately it always meant one thing. I finally faced him. Ethan stood at the kitchen island, hands braced on the counter, jaw tight like he'd been rehearsing something. He looked exhausted, shadowed eyes, stubble he'd missed shaving. Grief had aged him this past year in ways I still couldn't fully look at. I dried my hands on a towel. "Okay." He swallowed. "I know things have been hard. Since everything. Everything." That was the word people used when they didn't want to say stillbirth out loud. When they didn't want to acknowledge that I'd labored for 19 hours only to deliver silence. That my body had nearly followed our son into the dark. That the scar across my abdomen wasn't just surgical, it was final. I nodded once. "Yeah." He pushed off the counter and took a step closer. "I've been thinking a lot about how much I still want us to have a family." There it was. My chest tightened automatically, the old reflex. Guilt first, always. Even though doctors had said the complications weren't my fault. Even though biology had simply failed. I forced my voice steady. "We've talked about this. There are options. Just not right now. Adoption is expensive," he said quickly. "And surrogacy, with agencies, that's even worse." I crossed my arms. "So?" He exhaled through his nose, like he was about to jump off something high. "What if there was another way?" Something inside me went very still. "What kind of way?" I asked. His eyes flicked up to meet mine, and there was a brightness there that didn't belong to grief. It looked almost hopeful. "There's someone at work," he said. "A colleague. I've known her a few years." A faint buzzing started in my ears. "Okay," I said slowly. "She knows about what happened. About your health stuff." He rubbed the back of his neck. "We grabbed drinks last week after a late meeting. We got talking." My throat went dry. "Talking about?" "About us. About how much I want to be a dad. How unfair everything's been." He rushed the next words. "And she offered to help." I blinked. "Help how?" He inhaled. "She said she'd be willing to be our surrogate." For a split second, relief fluttered. That sounded generous. Too generous, but still. Then he kept going. "She'd use her own eggs," he said. "So we wouldn't need donors or agencies." My relief faltered. "Okay." He looked straight at me. "The only condition," he said carefully, "is that conception happens naturally." The buzzing in my ears roared. I stared at him. "Naturally," I repeated. He nodded once, like this was reasonable. "Logical. Practical. She doesn't want medical records or clinics involved," he said. "So during ovulation, I'd sleep with her until she gets pregnant." The room tilted. For a long moment, all I could hear was the drip of water from my scrubs into the sink. Then I realized something worse than what he'd said. He wasn't asking. He was explaining. And in his eyes, God help me, there was excitement. I didn't scream. That's the part that still unsettles me when I replay that night, how quiet I was. Like if I kept my voice level enough, reality might bend back into shape. I set the towel down very carefully on the counter. Say that again, I said. Ethan's shoulders tensed. It wouldn't be like that. My laugh came out thin. Like what? Like cheating, he said quickly. It wouldn't be emotional. It would just be logistics. Biology. Logistics. Biology. I stared at him, trying to reconcile the man in front of me with the one who used to leave me post-it notes in my lunch bag. The one who held my hair while I threw up through first trimester nausea. The one who sobbed into my hospital gown when our son was born without breath. Who is she? I asked. He hesitated just long enough to hurt. Maya. The name meant nothing to me. Which somehow made it worse. And she just offered? I said. Out of nowhere? She cares about what we've been through, he said. She thinks I deserve to be a dad. I flinched. We deserve. Yeah. He corrected quickly. Obviously. Obviously. A cold clarity started creeping in beneath the shock. You told her everything? I asked. He frowned, confused. What do you mean? Our marriage. My fertility. The pregnancy. The complications. Each word felt like gravel in my mouth. You told a coworker all of that? He rubbed his forehead. I needed someone to talk to. You were distant for a long time. Guilt stabbed on instinct. I crushed it down. So you confided in her, I said. And she decided the solution was to sleep with you. She didn't put it like that, he snapped, then softened. It's not about sex. It's about a baby. For you, I said quietly. His expression hardened. For us. I shook my head slowly. No. For you. Because you're the one who can still have one. Silence dropped between us, heavy and sharp. He stepped closer. That's not fair. Isn't it? My voice wavered despite myself. You're asking me to watch my husband get another woman pregnant. I'm not asking you to watch anything, he said, exasperated. It would be discreet. Scheduled. Clinical. The word clinical almost made me choke. You'd be having sex with her, I said. He threw up his hands. Only until conception. Then it stops. Like that made it better. I felt something inside my chest begin to fracture, not loudly, not dramatically. Just a quiet splitting, hairline at first. Have you already? I couldn't finish. His eyes widened. No. God, no. I would never do that without your consent. Consent. So this is you asking permission to sleep with someone else, I said. I'm asking you to consider a path to our family, he said. One that costs nothing. One that gives us a child that's biologically mine. There it was. Not ours. His. I swallowed hard. And biologically hers. He shrugged slightly. Genetics aren't everything. My vision blurred. They mattered enough for you to bring this home. He opened his mouth, then closed it. For a moment neither of us spoke. The refrigerator hummed. A car passed outside. Normal sounds from a world that suddenly felt very far away. Finally I asked, why would she do this? He answered too fast. She just wants to help. No one does this, I said. No one offers their body and eggs and 9 months of pregnancy to a married coworker they've never met the wife of. What does she get out of it? His jaw tightened. You're assuming bad intent. I'm assuming reality. He took a breath, like patience was running thin. She doesn't want money. She just believes in what we're trying to build. We? My voice cracked. She's already part of the we now? That's not what I meant. But it was. I saw it then, not fully, not consciously. Just the outline of something wrong. Something already too intimate between them. How long have you been talking about this? I asked. He hesitated. And in that pause, my stomach dropped. Because I suddenly knew the answer wouldn't be days. It would be months. He didn't answer right away. That was all it took. Months, my brain translated automatically. Not days. Not one inappropriate conversation after too many drinks. This had history. How long? I repeated. Ethan looked past me toward the dark kitchen window, like the reflection might help him choose the least damaging truth. A while, he said finally. Ice slid through my veins. A while, I echoed. Define that. He exhaled. Since last year. After the loss. The loss. My nails dug into my palms. You mean while I was recovering from surgery? Or when I couldn't walk without help? Or when I was in therapy trying not to drown in postpartum hormones with no baby? Don't do that, he said, pained. It wasn't like that. Then explain what it was like, I said. He dragged a hand through his hair. I was struggling. You were grieving in your way. I was grieving in mine. Maya listened. There it was again, that name spoken with a softness I'd never heard before tonight. You talked to her about me, I said. I talked to her about us, he corrected. About how I didn't want the pregnancy at first? I asked quietly. His eyes flicked away. That was my answer. Heat flushed up my neck. You told her that. She already knew things were hard, he said defensively. I just filled in context. Context. My resentment. My fear. My ambivalence before I'd forced myself to love a child I never got to meet. All of it, handed to another woman to interpret me through. What exactly does she think of me? I asked. She doesn't. What does she think of me, Ethan? He hesitated too long. My stomach twisted. She thinks I'm cold, doesn't she? He winced. She thinks you were detached. Detached. The word hit like a slap. Not grieving mother. Not traumatized patient. Detached. And you let her think that, I said. I didn't correct her enough, he admitted. But she saw how much I wanted to be a father. How alone I felt. Alone. I stared at him, disbelief flooding in waves. You were not alone. I was in the same house. The same bed. You were gone emotionally, he said, voice rising. You threw yourself into work the second you were cleared. You barely talked about him. About us. Because talking felt like suffocating. Because every nursery aisle and stroller commercial made my lungs seize. Because survival had meant compartmentalizing grief so I could function in an emergency room where babies died sometimes. But he'd needed a different kind of grief partner. So he'd found one. Her. How close are you? I asked. His brow furrowed. What? You and Maya, I said. How close? We're friends. Friends who discuss my uterus and your sex life logistics? That's not fair, he said sharply. Isn't it? My voice broke. You've planned intercourse schedules with her, Ethan. It's not like that. Then what is it like? Silence again. Thick. Guilty. My pulse pounded in my ears. Have you ever touched her? His head snapped up. No. Kissed? No. Wanted to? The question hung there, poisonous. He didn't answer immediately. And that was worse than yes. My chest constricted. You have. I didn't say that, he said quickly. You didn't deny it. He looked at me then, really looked, and whatever he saw on my face made his expression falter. Nothing happened, he said. I swear. This was always about the baby. But I could hear it now. The emotional thread woven through everything he'd described. The confidences. The drinks. The shared grief narrative where she understood him and I had failed him. He'd built something with her already. And now he wanted to legitimize it with my permission. A strange calm settled over me. So let me get this straight, I said. For months you've been emotionally intimate with a woman who believes I'm an obstacle to your happiness. She's volunteered to bear your child. And your solution is that you'll sleep with her repeatedly while I, what? Cheer you on? His face drained. That's not what I'm asking. It is exactly what you're asking. He stepped forward. I'm asking you to trust me. Trust. The word echoed hollow in the space between us. Because in that moment, staring at my husband, the man I had loved since my 20s, the man who held my hand in delivery rooms and funerals and mortgage signings, I realized something irreversible. He had already crossed a line. And he didn't even see it. I need you to stop talking to her. The words came out steadier than I felt. Ethan blinked. What? Maya, I said. I need you to cut contact. Completely. Outside of whatever is absolutely unavoidable for work. His expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. You're serious? Yes. He stared at me like I'd just suggested amputating a limb. That's extreme, he said. Extreme. Not the months of emotional intimacy. Not the pregnancy proposal. Not the expectation that I'd consent to him sleeping with another woman. No, my boundary was extreme. I folded my arms tighter. You asked what I need to even begin processing this. That's it. He paced once across the kitchen tile, agitation radiating off him. She didn't do anything wrong. I laughed softly, incredulous. She offered to have sex with a married man. She offered to help us have a child, he shot back. By having sex with a married man, I repeated. It wouldn't be cheating if you agreed. I don't agree. The words landed hard between us. He stopped pacing. You're not even considering it. I considered it for about 30 seconds, I said. Then my brain caught up with reality. His jaw clenched. You're letting jealousy distort this. Jealousy. The accusation stunned me silent for a beat. Then anger flared hot. Jealousy? You think this is about me feeling threatened by some coworker? His silence was answer enough. Something inside me snapped taut. You told her my medical history. My pregnancy trauma. My marriage struggles. You let her form opinions about me. You planned a sexual arrangement with her. And you think my objection is insecurity? It wasn't sexual, he insisted. You keep saying that while describing sex. He dragged both hands over his face. You're twisting this. No, I said quietly. I'm clarifying it. We stood there, the gulf between us suddenly enormous. I could feel my heart hammering, but beneath it a colder awareness was rising, something sharper than hurt. You've been having an emotional affair, I said. His head jerked up. That's not true. It is, I said. You shared intimacy with another woman that belonged in this marriage. I was venting, he said. People confide in friends. Friends don't propose conception schedules. He flinched. Have you talked about me with her recently? I asked. He hesitated. The answer was yes. My stomach dropped again. After you suggested this to me tonight, have you already discussed how I might react? His eyes widened. No. Did she ask? Silence. That was enough. My voice went very calm. She expects you to convince me. That's not. She expects me to be the obstacle, I said. The cold wife who denies you fatherhood. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Because that narrative already existed between them. I could feel it. Tell me something honestly, I said. If I said yes, how long until you slept with her? His throat worked. That's hypothetical. Answer. A beat. Soon, he admitted. The word landed like a physical blow. Not months of processing. Not counseling. Not careful boundaries. Soon. My chest constricted so hard I had to inhale slowly just to stay upright. You want her, I said. His eyes flashed. I want a child. With her body, I said. Her eggs. Her pregnancy. Your genetics. Our child, he insisted. No, I said. Yours and hers. That was the truth he refused to look at. Silence stretched again, heavy and raw. Finally I said, you need to cut contact. He shook his head slowly. I can't just erase someone who's been there for me. There it was. The admission he didn't realize he'd made. Been there for me. Not us. Him. My vision blurred, but my voice stayed level. Then you're choosing her involvement over my safety in this marriage. That's not fair, he said hoarsely. It's exact, I said. He stared at me, something like fear creeping in now. Are you saying, what, he asked? That this ends us? I held his gaze. I'm saying, I said, that if you keep her in your life, you're choosing another woman over your wife. The words hung between us, irreversible. And for the first time since this conversation began, Ethan looked truly shaken. Because he realized I meant it. We didn't resolve anything that night. There was no dramatic ultimatum, no slammed doors, no tear-soaked apologies. Just silence, thick, suffocating, unfinished. Ethan slept on the couch. I lay awake in our bed staring at the ceiling fan, watching its slow rotation carve shadows across the room we'd painted together when we first moved in. I could map our entire marriage from that vantage point, the dresser we'd argued about buying, the framed ultrasound still tucked face down in my nightstand drawer, the faint water stain from the time the upstairs neighbor's bathtub leaked. Normal life artifacts. Evidence of a marriage that, until a few hours ago, I had believed was fundamentally safe. I didn't cry. Shock does that sometimes. It freezes grief in place like a specimen under glass. Around 3:12 a.m., I got up. The house was dark except for the blue glow of Ethan's phone charging on the coffee table. He was asleep on his side, blanket twisted around his legs, one arm tucked under his head. He looked younger like that. Vulnerable. Familiar. My chest ached. For a fleeting second, instinct screamed at me to climb down beside him, press my face into his shoulder, and beg us back into normalcy. Instead, I picked up his phone. I didn't open it. I just held it. Because the realization had landed sometime after midnight with brutal clarity. There were entire conversations about me that I had never seen. Months of them. An alternate version of my marriage lived inside that device, one where another woman knew my husband's fears, resentments, hopes, and grief in ways I hadn't been allowed to witness. I set the phone back exactly where it had been. Not because I trusted him. Because I suddenly needed to know something more important first. Whether he would choose transparency without being forced. I went back to bed before dawn and finally slept for maybe an hour. When my alarm went off, the house smelled like coffee. Ethan was already dressed for work, standing stiffly in the kitchen. 2 mugs sat on the counter. Mine the way I liked it, oat milk, no sugar. Domestic normalcy as apology. I leaned against the doorway, arms folded. Morning, he said quietly. My throat felt scraped raw. Morning. We stood there a moment, strangers orbiting familiar routines. Finally he said, "I've been thinking." I waited. "I understand why you're upset," he said. "But cutting Maya off completely, that feels disproportionate." There it was again. Her name. Her place. Still intact. I studied him carefully. "Have you talked to her since last night?" A flicker of hesitation. "Yes," he admitted. I texted that things were complicated. My stomach hollowed. Complicated. "She deserved to know why I might be distant," he said quickly. Distant. Not ending. Not inappropriate. Distant. "You're proving my point," I said. He frowned. "What point?" "That she still ranks as someone whose feelings you're responsible for managing." "That's basic decency," he said. "No," I said softly. "Basic decency is protecting your marriage." His jaw tightened. "I am protecting it. By maintaining contact with the woman you proposed sleeping with." "I didn't propose it," he snapped. "She did." "And you brought it home," I said. Silence dropped again. I stepped into the kitchen fully now, the tile cool under my bare feet. "I need to ask you something," I said. "Okay." "If I hadn't objected, if I'd said yes last night, would you have slept with her?" He swallowed. "Eventually, yes." Eventually. The word echoed like a crack in ice. I nodded slowly. "Then you were prepared to cross that line." "It wouldn't be crossing if you consented," he said. "I didn't," I said. "And you still contacted her." He looked at me then, really looked, and something in my face must have shifted. Because uncertainty flickered across his expression for the first time. "What are you saying?" he asked. I held his gaze. "I'm saying," I said quietly, "that my husband considered having sex with another woman and still sees her as someone he can't let go." His face drained. "That's not." "It is," I said. "And you need to decide whether your priority is her presence in your life, or my trust in you." The words settled between us, heavy and unavoidable. He didn't answer. But in that silence, I felt something inside me change. Not break. Harden. I went to work that day on autopilot. Trauma bay, sutures, charting, consults, my hands moved, my voice functioned, my brain executed protocols. But underneath it all, something new had switched on. A cold, clinical awareness I usually reserved for unstable patients. Assess. Verify. Confirm. Because the story Ethan had told me, the benevolent coworker, the altruistic offer, the purely logistical arrangement, didn't sit right in my gut. People didn't offer sex-based surrogacy to married colleagues out of kindness. They offered it out of attachment. Or desire. Or obsession. Or all three. By mid-shift, I knew what I needed to do. I needed to see her. Not in person. Online. Reality check. At 2:14 p.m., between cases, I opened my phone and typed her name. Maya. Ethan's last name. Her profile appeared instantly. Public. My thumb hovered for a moment before I tapped. And there she was. Beautiful. Not just attractive, striking. Dark hair, bright eyes, the kind of face that made strangers turn twice. Her photos radiated effortless warmth, laughing with friends at a rooftop bar, hiking in sunlit mountains, curled around a golden retriever, wine glass tilted toward the camera. Alive in a way grief had drained out of me. I swallowed hard and kept scrolling. Work conference selfies. Group dinners. Office parties. And then my stomach dropped. There were photos with Ethan. Not intimate. Not touching. But unmistakably comfortable. Standing shoulder to shoulder at a team event. Smiling the same easy smile I hadn't seen from him in months. Date stamps, 8 months ago. 6 months. 4. Timeline. Consistent. Public. My pulse quickened. They'd built familiarity in plain sight. I clicked into tagged posts. More of the same group outings, captions about best team, inside jokes and comments. Her replies to him dotted with laughing emojis and teasing remarks. Nothing overt. But unmistakably close. Too close for someone I had never heard mentioned by name until last night. I opened her about. No relationship listed. No kids. One line in her bio snagged my attention. Future mom, yellow heart. My chest tightened. I stared at those 2 words far too long. Future mom. Was that who she'd always been? Or who she'd decided to be with him? A nurse called my name down the hall. I locked my phone and finished my shift on muscle memory. But the moment I got home, the investigation resumed. Ethan wasn't back yet. I set my bag down, washed my hands, and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. Facebook this time. Her account there was less public, but still enough. Friend list partially visible. Ethan was there. Of course. I clicked interactions. 8 months of comments. Reactions. Shared humor. Event tags. Gradual escalation of familiarity. And then I found it. A comment thread under a photo from a charity run. Someone had joked, "You two look like a couple face with tears of joy." Her reply. Work husband only winking face. Ethan had reacted with a laughing emoji. My vision tunneled. Work husband. The phrase sat on the screen like a diagnosis. Because that's what this was. An emotional partnership legitimized by workplace proximity. A socially acceptable intimacy. A bond built on shared hours, shared stress, shared confidences. While I'd been in therapy. In surgery recovery. In grief. He hadn't been alone. He'd been with her. I leaned back slowly in the chair, the pieces aligning with sickening precision. The drinks. The confessions. The fertility discussions. The conception plan. This hadn't begun with an offer. It had culminated in one. And Ethan either couldn't see that. Or refused to. A car door slammed outside. My heart jolted. He was home. I closed the laptop, but the knowledge stayed open in my mind, clear, structured, undeniable. My husband had a work wife who wanted his child. And he had almost said yes. Footsteps entered the kitchen. "Hey," he said carefully. I looked up at him. And for the first time since this started, I wasn't just hurt. I was certain. Who calls you their work husband? The question landed the second Ethan stepped fully into the kitchen. He froze. Not confusion. Not curiosity. Recognition. A tiny, involuntary tightening around his eyes that told me everything I needed before he even spoke. Where did that come from? He asked carefully. I held his gaze. Answer. He set his keys down slower than necessary. It's just a joke people use at work. People, I repeated. Or Maya. Silence. There it was again, that fraction of hesitation that had started to feel like a tell. Maya's said it before, he admitted. About you, I said. He shrugged, aiming for casual. It doesn't mean anything. I let a beat pass. I saw her profiles, I said. The casual mask cracked. You looked her up, he asked. Yes. His jaw tightened. That feels invasive. I almost laughed. You planned sex with her. I did not plan sex, he snapped. You discussed conception logistics, I corrected. Which require sex. He dragged a hand through his hair. You're reframing this to make it uglier. It already is ugly, I said quietly. I'm just describing it accurately. He looked away first. That mattered more than any argument. I leaned back against the counter. You've been close for months. We're colleagues, he said. You're emotionally intimate, I said. No. Yes, I said. You shared grief, marriage struggles, fertility trauma, and private judgments about me with her. That's intimacy. He shook his head. You're exaggerating. Am I? I pushed off the counter and stepped closer. Did you talk to her about my reluctance during pregnancy? I asked. He didn't answer. Did you tell her I was distant after the stillbirth? Silence. Did she express sympathy for you? His throat worked. Did she imply you deserved better? I pressed. Stop, he said. Did she ever suggest you'd be happier with someone who wanted motherhood as much as you? Stop, he said louder. Because the answer was yes. We both knew it. I held his gaze. She positioned herself as the woman who understood you better than your wife. That's not fair, he said hoarsely. It's exact, I said. He paced once, agitated. You're building a narrative that isn't real. It is real, I said. And you reinforced it every time you confided in her instead of me. You weren't available, he said. The words hit, but they didn't derail me. Then you address that in therapy, I said. You don't create a parallel emotional partnership. It wasn't a partnership, he insisted. Then why does she want your baby? Silence slammed down. Because that question had no innocent explanation. I stepped closer, voice low. Women don't volunteer their bodies and genetics to married men they're not emotionally invested in. He stared at me, shaken. And men don't consider it unless they're invested back, I finished. His eyes flashed. I never had feelings for her. Then you'll cut contact, I said. He hesitated. There it was. Proof. My chest tightened, but the clarity stayed. You can't, I said softly. Because she matters to you. She matters as a friend, he said. Friends don't propose sex, I said. He flinched again. I exhaled slowly. You had an emotional affair. No, he said automatically. Yes, I said. Intent doesn't change impact. I never touched her. You didn't have to, I said. You crossed intimacy boundaries already. His breathing had gone shallow now. Defensive certainty eroding into something closer to fear. You're rewriting our marriage, he said. No, I said quietly. I'm seeing it clearly. Silence stretched. Finally, I spoke the truth neither of us had said yet. You were building a life scenario with her, I said. Where she gave you the child you wanted and understood you the way you believed I didn't. His face drained of color. Because that was exactly what had happened. And for the first time since this began, he had no argument left. Ethan sat down. Not slowly. Not thoughtfully. Just dropped into the kitchen chair like his knees had given out. I'd never seen him look that disoriented before. I didn't realize, he said, voice low, that you saw it this way. Saw it. Like perception was the issue. Not behavior. I stayed standing. That's the problem. He rubbed his temples. It was never supposed to be, this. What was it supposed to be? I asked. He didn't answer right away. Because the honest answer was ugly: comfort, validation, understanding, admiration. Everything grief had eroded between us, rebuilt somewhere else. I needed someone to talk to, he said finally. You had a wife. You were drowning, he said. I didn't want to add to it. So you outsourced intimacy, I said. He winced. The word landed. I didn't think of it that way, he said. I know, I said. That doesn't change it. Silence pooled again. Then I asked the question that mattered most. Do you have feelings for her? His head snapped up. No. Answer without reflex, I said. Think. He swallowed. I watched the conflict move across his face: loyalty, defensiveness, denial, shame. Layers peeling under scrutiny. I care about her, he admitted. The admission felt like cold metal sliding under my ribs. As a friend, he added quickly. Do you feel drawn to her? I asked. He hesitated. Yes, he said quietly. My chest tightened, but I kept my voice steady. Emotionally. Yes. The kitchen seemed to shrink around us. There it was. Truth. Airless and undeniable. And the conception idea, I said. Did it appeal to you because it meant a child, or because it meant intimacy with her? His eyes widened. That's not fair. It's necessary, I said. Answer. He stared at the floor. Seconds passed. Both, he said. The word hollowed something inside me clean out. But along with the pain came something else. Clarity. Because he'd finally said it. He had wanted her. Not just the baby. Her. I nodded once, absorbing it. Okay. He looked up, alarmed. Okay? Yes, I said. Now we're honest. Fear flickered across his face. I didn't act on it. You were about to, I said. Only if you agreed. You asked me to agree, I said. That's intent. He flinched. Silence stretched, raw and exposed. Then I spoke the line that had been forming in me since dawn. You need to end it. His brow furrowed. End what? Whatever this is with her, I said. Completely. He stared at me. No private messages, I continued. No emotional conversations. No personal contact outside unavoidable work tasks. No friendship. No support. No intimacy. Nothing. That's drastic, he said. No, I said quietly. This is baseline marital boundaries. He rubbed his face. She didn't mean to hurt you. This isn't about her intent, I said. It's about your loyalty. He looked at me then, really looked, and something shifted. Because he finally understood the stakes. If I don't, he asked carefully. My voice stayed calm. Then you're choosing another woman over your marriage. The words settled like iron. He went still. You're serious, he said. Yes. Silence flooded the kitchen. I could almost hear the axis of his world tilting: grief bond versus wife, validation versus accountability, fantasy versus consequence. Finally he whispered, I never thought it would come to this. It already did, I said. Another long stretch of quiet. Then he asked the question that revealed everything. If I cut her off, can we fix this? I held his gaze. And for the first time since this began, the answer wasn't immediate. Because something fundamental had shifted in me. Trust didn't shatter loudly. It eroded. And erosion doesn't reverse overnight. I don't know, I said honestly. His face crumpled, not dramatically, just a subtle collapse of certainty. Because he realized something devastating in that moment. He might lose me. And for the first time, the risk was real enough to scare him. He changed his number that night. I watched him do it. No theatrics. No martyr speech. Just sitting at the edge of the couch, jaw tight, fingers moving across the screen while customer service music hummed faintly from speakerphone. When he hung up, he looked at me like he expected relief. I felt none. Block her everywhere, I said. He nodded and opened his apps one by one. Facebook. Instagram. LinkedIn. Even Venmo. Click. Block. Click. Block. Each tap was supposed to feel like closure. Instead, it felt like confirmation that something significant had existed to sever. When he finished, he placed his phone on the coffee table between us. "You can check," he said quietly. I studied him. "Give me access to everything," I said. He didn't argue. Passwords. Email logins. Tablet unlock code. Transparency as penance. I took the devices to the bedroom and closed the door. My hands shook, not from fear anymore, but from adrenaline. The clinical part of me had taken over again. Assess. Verify. Confirm. I started with email. Nothing recent. Deleted folder empty. Then Facebook messages. 8 months of conversation unfolded in front of me like a slow infection I hadn't noticed spreading. At first it was harmless. Work complaints. Meeting jokes. Shared memes. Then gradually, personal. "How are you holding up? I know you're trying your best. You deserve happiness. You're going to be an amazing dad someday." My throat tightened. I kept scrolling. There were moments where he'd been flirty, not explicitly sexual, but warm. Responsive. Encouraging. Laughing at her teasing. And her tone? Clear. Intentional. She complimented his dedication. Compared him favorably to other men. Sympathized with his loneliness. Subtly criticized me without ever using my name. She doesn't understand how much this means to you. Some people aren't built for motherhood. If you ever needed someone who truly wanted a family. That one ended with a winking emoji. My stomach twisted. I searched for keywords. Pregnant. Ovulation. Baby. There it was. The thread where everything shifted from emotional to strategic. She'd written, "I'd carry for you. No joke." He'd replied, "That's insane." But there was a laughing emoji after it. And no boundary. No shutdown. The conversation continued days later. "What if I'm serious? We'd have to figure out logistics." Logistics. The same word he'd used with me. My chest burned. They discussed artificial insemination briefly. She dismissed it. Too clinical. I don't want it to feel transactional. I'd rather it be natural. Natural. As if that made it sacred. As if that made it romantic. As if that made it anything other than what it was. He never once told her it was inappropriate. He never once said, "I'm married." This stops. Instead, he asked questions. Timing. Privacy. Feasibility. It wasn't a drunken suggestion. It was planning. My hands trembled as I took screenshots. Every single thread. Because clarity needed documentation. When I finally closed the apps, my chest felt hollowed out. He hadn't slept with her. But he'd allowed the idea to breathe. To grow. To feel possible. That was betrayal. When I walked back into the living room, Ethan looked up instantly. His face searched mine for answers. "Well," he asked. I sat down across from him. "You didn't physically cheat," I said. Relief flickered across his face. Then I continued. "But you built something with her. And you let it become sexual in intent." The relief vanished. He swallowed. "I told you it never got physical." "You never stopped it," I said. Silence. "You let her disrespect me," I continued. "You let her position herself as better suited for your future." His eyes filled, not with tears, but with dawning comprehension. "I didn't realize how far it went," he said quietly. I held his gaze. "I did," I said. And in that moment, I understood something else too. I wasn't the fragile one in this room anymore. He was. Something in me cooled after that night. Not numbness. Not forgiveness. Precision. For months, maybe years, I'd been moving through grief like fog, reacting instead of choosing. Surviving instead of directing. Even our marriage had followed that pattern, his needs, his timeline, his longing for fatherhood quietly shaping decisions I hadn't fully owned. Now the fog burned off. And what remained was stark. My husband had almost chosen another woman to give him a child. Not because I was gone. Because she was available. That distinction mattered. I woke the next morning before dawn, lay still, and replayed the message threads in my mind, not as a wounded wife this time, but like a physician reviewing imaging. Pattern recognition. She validated him where I had struggled. She mirrored his desire for parenthood. She framed me as obstacle. He absorbed it. Reinforced it. And when opportunity appeared, he stepped toward it. Not maliciously. But willingly. Which meant the vulnerability wasn't just her. It was him. I rolled onto my side and watched him sleeping. He'd come back to our bed sometime after 2 a.m., tentative, like a guest unsure of welcome. His hand rested inches from my hip but not touching. Distance he finally understood. Good. Because for the first time since we'd met, I was looking at him without the automatic softness of love filtering everything. I saw him clearly. Flawed. Grieving. Lonely. Suggestible. Capable of betrayal under the right emotional conditions. Human. The realization hurt. But it also freed me. Because if he was capable of that, then I needed to stop being reactive and start being intentional. By the time he woke, I'd already showered, dressed, and made coffee. He watched me cautiously from the kitchen doorway. Morning. Morning, I said. We moved around each other carefully, like strangers in a rental house. Finally he said, I've been thinking about what you said. I waited. I crossed lines, he said. Emotionally. The admission landed softer than it should have. Too late for impact, but necessary for accuracy. Yes, I said. I didn't see it, he continued. Not fully. But reading those messages. I get it now. I studied him. Do you? He nodded. I let her become important in ways that should have been only you. Progress. Small. But real. And the baby idea? I asked. His face tightened. It was wrong. Why? I said. He hesitated. Because it would have hurt you, he said. I shook my head slightly. That's consequence. Not reason. He frowned. Why was it wrong, Ethan? He swallowed. Because it blurred boundaries. Closer. He exhaled slowly. Because it involved intimacy with someone outside my marriage. There it was. Accuracy. Yes, I said. He rubbed his palms together, anxious energy radiating. I don't want her. Not like that. You did, I said calmly. His eyes lifted to mine, pained. Yes, he said quietly. Honesty again. Strangely, it steadied me. Because truth, however ugly, was something I could work with. Denial wasn't. I'm ending all contact, he said. Not just blocking. I'll request reassignment away from her team. That caught my attention. You'd change projects, I said. If that's what it takes, he said. I nodded once. Good. Action mattered more than apology. He stepped closer, cautious. I want to fix us. I held his gaze. And for the first time since this began, I didn't immediately prioritize his hope. Instead, I asked myself a different question. What do I need? The answer rose with surprising clarity. I need time, I said. And space to decide whether I still want this marriage. His face drained. You're considering leaving? Yes. The word landed like a dropped weight. Because now the power balance had shifted. He wasn't negotiating forgiveness anymore. He was facing potential loss. And I realized something profound in that moment. For the first time since our son died, I was no longer the one afraid of abandonment. He was. I think we need rules. The words came out while Ethan was halfway through making dinner, something simple and careful, like food itself might fracture under tension. Pasta, Jared sauce, garlic he'd chopped too fine. He froze with the wooden spoon mid-stir. Rules. Yes. He turned off the burner and faced me fully. There was no defensiveness left now, only wary attention. Okay, he said. I pulled out a chair and sat, folding my hands on the table. Not confrontational. Not emotional. Deliberate. I'm not deciding anything yet, I said. About us. About staying. About leaving. His throat moved. I understand. But if there's any possibility of rebuilding, I continued, the structure of this marriage changes. He nodded immediately. Anything. We'd reached that phase. The one where the unfaithful partner becomes hyper-compliant. I noted it clinically. First, I said, no contact with her means none. Not friendly. Not polite. Not closure conversations. Nothing beyond unavoidable professional necessity, and even that documented. I already requested reassignment, he said. HR meeting tomorrow. Good. Second, I said, full transparency continues. Devices. Accounts. No deletions. Ever. Yes. Third, individual therapy. Not grief-focused. Boundaries and attachment. He blinked, surprised, but nodded. Okay. Fourth, couples therapy weekly. Yes. Fifth, I said, and here I paused a fraction, you don't pressure me about children. At all. For at least 2 years. His face shifted to pain, disappointment, fear. But he didn't argue. Okay, he said quietly. That mattered more than agreement. Compliance without coercion. And finally, I said, you accept that I may still leave. Silence fell. He looked at the floor. Even if I do everything. Yes. He nodded once, absorbing it like impact. Those are the conditions, he asked. For now, I said. He exhaled slowly. I accept. The simplicity of it almost stunned me. No bargaining. No minimization. Because now he understood reality. He was not negotiating terms of forgiveness. He was requesting eligibility to remain. Power had shifted fully. We sat in silence a moment, the kitchen warm with garlic and simmering sauce, domestic normalcy wrapped around a marriage under reconstruction. Finally he said, can I ask something? You can ask, I said. I may not answer. He swallowed. Do you still love me? The question landed softer than I expected. I considered it honestly. Yes, I said. Relief flickered across his face. Then I continued. But love isn't the deciding factor anymore. The relief vanished. Trust is, I said. Safety is. Respect is. Choice is. He nodded slowly. I understand. And right now, I said, those are damaged. He closed his eyes briefly. I know. We ate in near silence after that. Pasta tasted like nothing. The air between us felt fragile but strangely clearer than it had in months. After dishes, he hovered in the doorway of the living room. Is it okay if I sit with you? He asked. Not assuming. Asking. I nodded once. He sat at the opposite end of the couch, leaving space between us. And I realized something unexpected. For the first time since this began, I felt in control of my own future. Not trapped by grief. Not obligated by marriage. Not cornered by his longing. I could stay. I could leave. I could rebuild. I could walk away. Choice had returned to me. And with it, strength. I leaned back against the cushions, exhaling slowly. This wasn't resolution. Not even close. But it was the first moment since the kitchen conversation that I didn't feel like the injured party. I felt like the deciding one. And that changed everything. The email arrived 3 days later. Subject line, HR reassignment confirmation. Sender, Ethan. Forwarded to me without comment. I opened it at work between patients, scanning quickly. His project transfer had been approved. Effective immediately. Different floor. Different team. No shared meetings. Distance created. Boundary enforced. I exhaled slowly, tension I hadn't fully acknowledged easing a fraction. Then I saw the attachment. Another forwarded message thread. This one not from HR. From her. Timestamp, that morning. My pulse spiked. I opened it. From Maya. Ethan. I heard you requested reassignment. I'm guessing this is about what you told me the other night. I want you to know I never meant to cause harm to your marriage. I truly believed I was offering something beautiful for both of you. But cutting me out completely feels extreme. You said our friendship mattered. That I mattered. If this is what you need, I'll respect it. But I'd be lying if I said it didn't hurt to be erased. I hope someday you'll remember me kindly. M. The clinic hallway noise faded around me. My vision tunneled to the screen. There it was. The final piece. Not apology. Not accountability. Possessiveness wrapped in gentleness. You said I mattered. Friendship mattered. Erased. Language of someone who believed she'd held a legitimate place in my husband's emotional world. Which she had. My jaw tightened. I scrolled down. Ethan's reply. From Ethan. Maya. I'm sorry for the pain this causes you. But my priority has to be my marriage. I crossed boundaries that should never have been crossed. What developed between us was inappropriate. I take responsibility for that. I wish you well, but I can't have further contact outside necessary work matters. E. I read it twice. Then a third time. The wording was correct. Clear. Final. But my chest still burned. Because even in closure, emotional residue lingered. Pain this causes you. I wish the line said, pain we caused my wife. It didn't. I locked my phone and finished my shift on mechanical autopilot. By the time I got home, anger had settled under my ribs like coals. Ethan looked up from the table when I walked in. You saw it, he said. Yes. Silence stretched. I handled it, he added carefully. You did, I said. He waited. I set my bag down slowly. She thinks she was important to you. His face tightened. She was a friend. No, I said. She was an emotional partner. He flinched. And she still thinks that, I continued. Because you let it be true for months. I know, he said quietly. I stepped closer. Do you understand what bothers me most? He shook his head. That she still framed herself as someone losing something legitimate, I said. Like she had a claim. His shoulders sagged. I ended it. Yes, I said. Now. The word hung sharp. After planning a child with her, I added. After months of intimacy. After letting her believe she mattered. His voice cracked. I told her it was inappropriate. Now, I repeated. Silence fell again. Then I said the thing that had been forming all afternoon. I want to meet her. His head jerked up. What? I want to look her in the eyes, I said. And hear her version. No, he said instantly. That answer came too fast. Which told me something else remained unresolved. I need closure, I said. She's out of our lives, he said. There's nothing to gain. There's truth, I said. You already have it, he insisted. I held his gaze. No, I said softly. I have yours. And for the first time since this began, I wanted hers. I met her on a Thursday afternoon. Not by accident. Not impulsively. Deliberately. I'd told Ethan the night before, I'm doing this with or without your comfort. He'd argued, resisted, warned it would reopen wounds. But that was the point. Because closure built only from his narrative still left a shadow in my mind, her version, her motives, her belief that she'd been something meaningful in my husband's life. I needed to see that belief collapse. So I emailed her from a neutral account. I'm Ethan's wife. I'd like to speak once. Public place. No hostility. Closure only. She replied within 20 minutes. Yes. Which told me everything. We met at a quiet cafe halfway between our offices. Late afternoon lull, few patrons, soft jazz, windows full of gray winter light. I arrived first and chose a table with clear sightlines. Control mattered. When she walked in, I recognized her instantly. Photos hadn't exaggerated. She was beautiful in that effortless way some people are, clear skin, expressive eyes, confident posture. She scanned the room, spotted me, and approached with measured calm. No guilt. No fear. Expectation. She sat across from me. Thank you for meeting. Her voice was warm. Practiced empathy. I studied her for a moment before speaking. You wanted my husband's child, I said. She inhaled slowly. I wanted to help him have the family he longs for. There it was. The reframing. Him. Not us. You discussed having sex with him, I said. Her gaze didn't drop. Yes. The bluntness almost impressed me. You knew he was married. Yes. And you believed that was appropriate. I believed, she said carefully, that love can take unconventional forms when people are hurting. I almost smiled. That was how she justified it, to herself and others. Compassion narrative over desire. You were in love with him, I said. A flicker. Brief. Real. Then she said, I cared deeply for him. Translation, yes. And you believed you were better suited to give him what he needed than I was, I said. She hesitated. Which was answer enough. I saw how much he wanted fatherhood, she said. And how alone he felt in that longing. There it was again. Alone. The shared myth. I leaned forward slightly. Did he ever tell you he wanted you instead of me? Her eyes widened. No. Truth. I believed that. Did he promise a future with you? No. Also truth. Because Ethan hadn't intended replacement. He'd intended addition. Which was its own betrayal. You offered sex repeatedly, I said. She exhaled. I offered conception. Through sex, I said. Yes. We held eye contact. Then she said softly, you didn't want children then. He did. I thought, maybe there was space. Space. For her. Inside my marriage. I nodded slowly. You believed you were filling a gap. Yes. The honesty was almost disarming. But clarity remained. You weren't filling a gap, I said. You were exploiting grief. Her face tightened. That's unfair. No, I said calmly. It's accurate. Silence stretched. I watched her carefully, the composure, the conviction, the lingering hurt that Ethan had cut her off. You loved him, I said. This time she didn't deflect. Yes, she said quietly. There it was. Out loud. Reality. And he loved you? I asked. Her eyes flickered. Not the way you mean. Also truth. I leaned back. That's why you're here, I said. You needed to know if you'd mattered. Her lips parted slightly. Because I'd named it. Yes, she admitted. I nodded once. You mattered to him emotionally, I said. But you were never his choice. The words landed clean and sharp. Her composure cracked, just a hairline fracture around the eyes. Because she'd hoped otherwise. I stood. He chose his marriage, I said. Not you. Silence. Then I added the final truth. And I chose whether that marriage continues. That landed harder. Because now she saw the full hierarchy. She had never been competitor. Only intrusion. I held her gaze one last moment. Then I turned and walked out. And for the first time since this began, I felt victorious. I didn't tell Ethan right away. Not out of secrecy. Out of clarity. The conversation with Maya had given me something I hadn't fully had before, the complete shape of what had happened. Not just his version, not just my pain, hers too. Her belief. Her longing. Her misplaced conviction that she'd held a legitimate place in my husband's future. She hadn't. And now she knew it. That mattered more than any argument. I came home that evening to find Ethan cooking again, attempt number 3 at normalcy. The kitchen smelled like cumin and roasted vegetables. Music played softly from his phone. He looked up the second I stepped in, searching my face like weather radar. You're late, he said carefully. I met her, I said. Everything in him went still. You what? I met Maya. Color drained from his face. You said you might. I didn't think. I needed to, I said. Silence filled the kitchen, thick and electric. What did she say? He asked. Truth, I said. He swallowed. Which is? I set my bag down and leaned against the counter. She loved you, I said. His eyes closed briefly. I know, he whispered. She believed she could give you what I couldn't, I continued. Pain flickered across his face. I never wanted that. I know, I said. You wanted both. That landed. Because it was accurate. I was stupid, he said hoarsely. Selfish. Blinded by grief. Yes, I said. No cushioning. No minimizing. Truth only. He nodded once, accepting the judgment. What did she want from you? He asked. Validation, I said. To know if she mattered. His gaze dropped. And, he asked quietly. I held his eyes. I told her she mattered emotionally, I said. But she was never your choice. His breath caught. And that I'm the one who decides whether this marriage exists, I finished. Silence fell. Then something in his posture shifted, not collapse, not relief. Recognition. Because he finally understood the full reversal. He had almost traded certainty for fantasy. And now certainty itself depended on me. I'm sorry, he said. I know, I said. We stood there a moment, the distance between us no longer raw but defined. Finally, he asked the question that had hovered for weeks. Are you staying? I let the silence stretch. Because this was the decision point, not of forgiveness, but of self. I'm staying, I said. Relief broke across his face. Then I added. For now. It stopped him mid-breath. Rebuilding isn't guaranteed, I said. It's conditional. Ongoing. And entirely dependent on your actions. I understand, he said quickly. And there's something else, I said. He waited. You don't get to pursue fatherhood right now, I said. Not with me. Not through me. Not around me. His face tightened with old longing, but he nodded. Okay. Because before we decide whether we're parents, I said, we decide whether we're partners. He exhaled slowly. Yes. And if at any point I believe you're vulnerable to this again, I continued, I leave. No argument, he said. Good. We stood in quiet for a long moment. Then he asked softly, do you hate me? I considered. No, I said. But I see you clearly now. That was the true consequence. Not rage. Not punishment. Clarity. And clarity changes love permanently. He nodded, eyes wet. I'll spend the rest of my life earning back what I damaged. Maybe, I said. Because nothing was guaranteed anymore. And that uncertainty, once terrifying, now felt like power. I moved past him and opened the oven, checking the vegetables. Ordinary motion. Domestic continuity. Life continuing. But inside, something had settled into place. He had nearly betrayed me in the most intimate way possible. Another woman had tried to claim space inside my marriage. And in the end? Neither got what they wanted. He didn't get a child. She didn't get him. And I got myself back.